Hi, everyone, and I know that since you're all customers, I want to thank you first for your business. We recognize that the enterprise platform landscape has been changing, as well as user usage patterns. And so with that in mind, we've created a browser interface for SEER SIM, which we're going to show you this morning. I'm starting with the Galrath webpage, as you can see. I placed a different address in the toolbar. Press return, and you're going to see the first screen of the SEER SIM browser edition. What you see first is a selection of templates. I'll explain later, you may not always see these templates, but in this instance you do. And as you can see, there are 6 templates. This being an internal version, we have some that a user may not ordinarily see, but there are business case, detailed estimate, review estimates only, maintenance. I'll get into what templates are later in detail, but for now I just wanted to start with the screen to show you. I'm going to hit next. And you'll see an interface that we've arranged in a more or less tabular format. For those of you who've used the Project Assistant in SEER SIM, you'll see some similarities to that. We've broken down the entry needs for a project into bite-sized pieces to make them a little more digestible. You start on the begin screen, and as you can see, my name has already been entered there. I'm going to go through a basic estimate and show you how this works. I'm going to enter an element name. Being a demo, I'll just enter any name there. An origin or acquisition method. We are using both terms here. As you can see, acquisition method is the knowledge base name, but we've renamed it, and that's a hint about what you can do with the browser. We'll get into that also a little bit later. I'm going to say new development, class knowledge base, no knowledge, notes. I like this edition. I'm going to hit next, and as I hit next, you see it lets me enter size. And I'm going to enter an arbitrary amount here just to produce an estimate. If I have lines, I've entered them there. Reuse, I can enter that there. Hit next. I can enter function points. Let's say I also have some function points as part of this project. And I'm going to say my phase is proposal. Use default is equivalent in SEER SIM to a knowledge base setting. The classify screen lets me select the operating environment, otherwise known as the platform, type of application, business analysis tool, standard, commercial low. Development page or screen lets me select the development process, primary language, risk screen, requirements volatility. Have a look at the entries here. In SEER SIM, you'll see low to high. Well, yes, in SEER SIM. And you'll also see help to let you make the rating decision. What we've done here is we've created a rating that actually incorporates both the low to extra high for requirements volatility, but also more text that lets you describe what the ratings mean. So it's all contained in one entry. If I were to enter NOM, it's right there. Effort risk tolerance, optimistic. These would be equivalent to the 10 to 90% effort, the risk settings in SEER SIM. If I need help, I have a little button here, the I button for information. If I press it, more help excuse me, comes up. Let's say I press here and I see this small amount of help, but I want more help. I click more help, and the entire SEER SIM help system is accessible within the browser. Closing this, show you once more. Click effort risk tolerance, more help, and there's all the help you need from SEER SIM. I'm going to hit next again. And these are staffing considerations. Let's say I decide use default, and I enter a staffing constraint. Starting out small, next month growing. And now I hit next, or instead of hitting next, I can also click up here to get an estimate. So I've entered all these values on these various screens, and now the time has come to get that estimate. We're gone back to the SEER engine here to get that estimate, and here it is seen in a browser. These are the charts that the SEER browser edition comes with, and we also have a selection of reports. I can hit View Reports there, or View Reports up here. Hit it here instead. And I'm going to select Basic, Labor, Activity, Risk, and an Entries report. I can set a reference. If I set a reference, watch what happens. I set the reference, and that trade-offs report there becomes active. The trade-off report is similar to setting a reference in SEER. Let's say I go back to lines. I change the lines assumption more than we thought. I go back to the estimate menu. And the trade-offs report is going to show us the difference between the two estimates. It's again gone back to SEER to obtain that estimate. View reports, back to the trade-offs report, and here we see the change in lines of code from 3,400 to 4,000, and no other changes were made in the entries, and we also see the change in the estimate. The difference between the trade-offs in the browser and the trade-offs in the SEER is I can keep on setting references. I'm going to go for a second go around. Set a reference. Now I'm going to change another assumption. I'm going to say effort risk tolerance is slightly conservative. Go back to the estimate menu. Obtaining that update right now. I keep on going to obtain an estimate, and I'm going to the slowest part of the browser, which is actually going back to the SEER on an estimate server, on a server which can be co-located or at distance, and obtaining that estimate. Now I'm going to view reports again, and here's the trade-off report again. Second go, first go. I can keep on doing that and obtain up to about 10 references, so you could see how the settings change over time. Slightly conservative is the new setting. So slightly expanded trade-offs over what SEER can offer you. Let me walk you around some of the additional features of this interface. First of all, walking you through the estimate like this, I may have given you the impression that these were the only screens you could use. However, that first screen, log out, if I go back and log out, I've set up the log out here to take me to the Galath home screen, which I'll just go right back to the template screen. Let's decide that instead of the business case, I want to go to the detailed estimate. These are templates. The templates set up the entire look and feel of the browser. So the screens I showed you last are no longer the screens you now see. Now we have description instead of begin, instead of classify. We have knowledge bases, functions, lines, personnel. You can reproduce the entire SEER set of parameters in the browser if you want. You can also produce just a subset. Let's say you're usually estimating with no more than 10 parameters. You can just set up those 10 parameters to show in the browser and no more. Let's say you have a subset of those parameters that you normally use. You can constrain the range. This can be just 2 selections. This can be just 5 selections and so on. Let's say that you don't like our templates. If you don't like our templates, you can change them. These are all user-defined. So again, I log out. I go back to this initial screen. I'm going to show you these templates here. These templates can be created from scratch with any text that you want here, any description, any further description here. You see how they change depending upon the description here changes depending upon the choice. They can be completely defined by you. If you have certain users you want to view results only and not change estimates, we can accommodate that. If you want to do a maintenance only estimate, you can create a template that accommodates only that. I'm going to go back to the first template I showed you, the business case template. Load that again. So I've introduced you to all these pages and how you can modify them. You can modify also the names of the entries here. We call them entries because they map to CRSIM parameters, but you can change their names. For example, as I've shown you, the origin name here points to the acquisition method knowledge base. And there are other examples of that here where we've changed names to suit user preference. Now, let's say I want to do more than a simple estimate. I'm implicitly estimating one program element here. But let's say I have a work breakdown structure. If I hit WBS, there's my first element there. And I actually should have given it a name. So I'm going to go back, enter an element name. Now I'm going to go back to WBS again. There's my first element. Now I'm going to insert another element. Second element. Just showing you how the WBS works. I'm not going to spend much time on creating an estimate here. You can create a multi-element work breakdown structure using this. So this supports pretty much what CRSIM can do in terms of a work breakdown structure. Let's say I now want to open a project. I don't want to create something from scratch. I created a project in CRSIM, for example, and I want to open that. I don't want to save what I'm doing now. I just want to open that. I'm going to select Trading Support System. Those of you who know the sample projects in CRSIM, I'm overlooking something here, so I want to go back into this. I'm going to go to File, Open again. Okay. I showed this screen, but I didn't explain it. This is a screen showing all the projects in the SEER database. And so the browser, to obtain and store projects, uses the SEER Enterprise database, the very same database that the CRSIM desktop can use, which is a SQL Server database which can be accessible by everyone in the enterprise and also have permissions placed upon it so that there are project level permissions for opening, closing, reviewing assigned to the projects. The browser honors all the permissions that you might assign using the collaboration feature in CRSIM. So now I'm going to select one of the projects that was stored already in the enterprise database, Trading Support System. I'm going to load that project. It's going to the enterprise database now and loading that project into the browser, into the system that hosts the browser, I should say, because this is zero footprint. And now you can see that sample project, the very same one you would load in CRSIM. You can see that sample project here in the browser. As I pass my mouse over these elements, you can see the estimate for each of these items. So analyst support, I don't have to open it to see the estimate. I can just pass my mouse over them. But let's say I do want to open one. Opening it right now. Prices database. just a moment more. It takes some time to get a big project from the database. You'll see that because we've actually done this work before, we've done this estimate, we open on the review screen. So there's some smarts to the way the browser operates to try to save you some time. We don't expose you to the very first set of parameters if there's an estimate that already exists. We know the user usually wants to look at that estimate first to view reports and so on. So these are the estimate produced on the desktop. That being said, we've opened this in the browser, so the first question might naturally be, what happens to all my settings and everything when I open them this way? Well, we don't have any problem opening anything created on the desktop. Rather, we're fully compatible with whatever's created on the desktop, so that entries you've created in the project using the SEER desktop version are retained in this version, in the browser. Entries you make in the browser can be saved and then opened in the desktop version. If I were to look at the estimate for this, this would be the very same estimate that you'd see opening this project on the desktop, and they'd be completely portable with one another. At this point, I think I've shown the essential capabilities. Oh, I forgot one. Format for printing. If you want to print this out and provide this to a colleague or whatever you want to do with it, we actually support that with a native PDF feature. So here is a PDF summary of the entire browser, of the entire project as seen in the browser. All the reports, I think I showed you the charts at the top, and the entries. And you can share this PDF document as you would any. Okay, I think I've shown you all the major features of the browser now and given you a hint of how customizable it is and how it works with the desktop SEER. I think there's probably a lot of questions resulting from this, so I'd like to turn this over to Kelly for any questions that have been asked.